and
progress.
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something Else.
Something Else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
welcome to episode number 224 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 61 from September 3rd, 2003. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the lads to my Mad Mikey. It's Cyndi. Cyndi, now that I need a new co-host, you know anyone who can replace you after you quit for me calling you that? Wow, Cyndi it isn't even a joke. Cyndi literally just X'd out of the thing. All right, so while Cyndi plays her joke and eventually comes back on here to the program, we'll just point out here that this is, of course, September 3rd, 2003, live on tape from Nashville, Tennessee. As I'll note later on, the first round matches of the Super X Cup were taped on August 20th, while everything else was taped on August 27th. And Cyndi has returned now that I've called her Laz.
You want me to leave again?
Wow, I thought you would have taken it as a compliment that I called you Laz.
No.
We'll talk about Laz, the most unnecessary addition to a program in TNA history, and think about all the ground that covers. Think about like that first episode where like every top name was in the gauntlet match, and they had to fill the undercard with a 6-minute exhibition trios match, which should have gotten a lot more time to fill up some time on the damn show. And then like every like crappy Nashville wrestler out there filled up the rest of the undercard just to get an hour of programming so we could get to the gauntlet match. They had more of a use than Laz does on this show. So, anywho, as we are wont to do, we like to tell you what else happened in the world of TNA as per the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And Dave didn't actually report this, but you may be sitting there and wondering, okay, why was this show taped? Why didn't they just do a live show here? And why is next week, for instance, a pre-taped? It's a pre-taped best of show. You know, you're wondering why. Well, because the Nashville Fairgrounds Arena is on an actual fairgrounds, and they need this building for the Tennessee State Fair, which, as a shoot, is running right now in the first couple of weeks of September 2003. Hence, they need the Nashville Fairgrounds Arena. So, anyway, also, Cyndi will be happy to know that we're giving her a week off. There will not be a TNA show next week. We'll be back on the 17th. And while they don't announce it on this show, they actually announce it next week during the 1 Cent Best of show. Next week, in 2 weeks, it's Raven versus Shane Douglas, hair versus hair. Cyndi, are you ready for one of the most infamous incidents in TNA history?
I sure am.
Now, not to spoil the finish of that match or anything, but easier for me to say. You recall about a month ago, we noted that Raven and CM Punk were originally booked to have a hair versus hair match in Ring of Honor, and that got ixnayed. And we speculated that TNA got it ixnayed. And this week it came out that, yes, TNA did have it ixnayed. Jeff Jarrett told Raven that if he went and had his head shaved in ROH, that TNA would not book him again until his hair grew back. So don't want to spoil the finish of that match, but Raven was all set to have his head shaved in Ring of Honor. And then the other news that came out was that on August 27th, TNA offered written contracts to all their regular talent who were not already under contract. Now, keep in mind, like the AMWs, AJ Styleses of the world, they were already under contract. But the key is they did not want to become a WWE feeder system, as we've seen with Paul London, as we saw with Zach Gowen, as we've now seen with Alexis Lurie, where they put people on the show, they get over, or at least they got something that makes them stand out, and WWE runs and signs them because they don't have a deal with TNA to do more than just an appearance here and there. So that's the big thing, and there are clauses in the contract that say the TNA has to approve indie dates, which ultimately is not seen as a big deal because no independent companies run shows on Wednesdays. However, this could be a big deal to people with Japanese bookings, specifically those with All Japan and 01, because they tend to be very last minute with booking international talent. As we've seen in the past with like Amazing Red and Elix Skipper and all that, just disappear off the show with no warning. Now, people like Christopher Daniels don't have to worry about it because New Japan and Pro Wrestling Noah announce their dates so far in advance that there's no issue with them and TNA. But yeah, that is pretty much where we're at here, where they want to sign people, and specifically these contracts also are saying something like, you need to let the office know at least 30 days in advance of your Japanese touring dates. And I just mentioned the issue with that. All Japan and 01 don't give a fuck. And in case you're like, well, then why don't these wrestlers say, well, screw you, give us our bookings ahead of time. So we're just going to go to TNA. Well, as we mentioned last week when Cyndi tried to tell me the Sandman makes $1,000 a week, people are not making that much money in TNA unless you're a big name. And so while you could be getting legitimately $1,000, $1,500 a week in All Japan or 01 versus a couple $100 at best once a week in TNA. So it's, it makes more sense to say, you know what, if this is the way you look at it, sorry, not sorry. And Low Key is the one specifically that they're like, man, we really want Low Key to sign this deal, but Low Key is probably not going to give up his Japanese bookings for TNA.
No, and at this point in time, he's almost got his way getting run out of Ring of Honor.
Well, it's Low Key. He's going to be run out of every promotion in all of wrestling, and I pretty much do mean every fucking promotion, and in most cases, more than one time. So on to the show. This is the famous Super X Cup show, and the show opens with a video package which had brief previews of everyone involved on this show. Now, am I saying everyone involved in the Super X Cup? Of course not, silly. It's everyone involved in the Wednesday Bloody Wednesday match, which at least will answer our question from last week as to who the hell was in this match. Then we have the most useless segment in TNA history, at least up to this point. It is Mad Mikey versus Laz. Now, there's a lot of questions to be had here. Why is this match happening? Who the hell is Laz? Why the hell is this match happening in the opener specifically? And we'll get to that later, but if you were being forced and held against your will to have this match, this was not the spot to air this match. And this match is happening because apparently a 7-match tournament and a War Games match is not enough to fill a 2-hour pay-per-view. Now, to answer the question as to who or what Laz is, to put it very succinctly, Laz is gay.
I have here
Literally.
The Rainbow Express, but even gayer.
And the good news about this is that in the past year, since the Rainbow Express were a thing, Mike Tenay and Don West have become much more accepting of the gay community. Because Don West last year would have been canceled in 2025. But Laz tried to encourage Mikey to bang him during the match, and then he kissed Mikey, so Mikey gave him a double arm DDT for the win. 0 out of 10.
Absolutely 0 out of 10. Tenay said, and I am quoting Tenay, he reminds me of exotic Adrian Street.
I mean, that's what he said last year about the Rainbow Express. He knows one gay character in wrestling, and he's going to bring them up every time we have a gay character. I'm going to bet if we make it to 2010 and Orlando Jordan's on TV, he's going to be talking about exotic Adrian Street.
No, he's going to talk about the Rainbow Connection. But this is a match that should only exist on Explosion. It happened, but hold on. It happened, but like a felled tree falling down the forest and nobody is around, did it actually even happen?
I thought the match was taped for Explosion, and then it's like they discovered they had 3 minutes that they need to put something in there, apparently. And instead of just having the show end, they're like, oh, let's just stick a random 3-minute match into the damn show.
You know what the funny thing is about this? They actually had a match on Explosion.
Was it this match?
I think so.
It wouldn't shock me at all if it was this match. By the way, remember, I forgot to mention this last week when Mad Mikey did his interview with Mike Tenay and talked about how he didn't want to be called Mad Mikey. And we asked, why is he then called Mad Mikey? And then what does he want to be called if not Mad Mikey? Because this is another Vince Russo gimmick that somebody's being forced to be called something they don't want to be forced. You remember in WCW, the Mamalukes, their whole thing was they didn't want to be called the Mamalukes. They wanted to be called the Paisans. And then I'm like, well, why the hell can't they just be called the Paisans if that's what they want to be called? Why does Mad Mikey have to be called Mad Mikey if he doesn't want to be called Mad Mikey?
It reminds me of, you know, when Elix Skipper started in WCW?
Oh my God. Yeah, I know where you're going, but yes.
His name was Skip Over.
And this isn't a Mark Jindrak as basket case thing that never actually appeared on television. No, Elix Skipper was on television as Skip Over.
And this is why I think Ice Train, like, he should have had a run either in TNA or WWE as M.I. Smooth.
You think Elix Skipper should have been M.I. Smooth?
No.
But so you know that was Ice Train, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
On an episode of Thunder, M.I. Smooth talked to Skip, and he said, the name sucks. Why don't you come up with your own name? And so Elix Skipper finds Terry Taylor, who was the agent for this show. And Skipper said, I have a better name. And Terry Taylor was like, you really want to do this? It's like, yeah, all right. So when he gets announced by Penzer, although you can't really hear Penzer because they never really got their ring announcer mic great. So instead it was So he became the primetime player Elix Skipper. All thanks to M.I. Smooth.
Thank you to M.I. Smooth for encouraging Elix Skipper to use his real name.
And also the primetime player moniker as well.
Oh, that doesn't count. By the way, Elix Skipper, one half of the longest WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions of all time. This discussion
for 24
about
years running.
No, he was champion for 8 days. Rey Mysterio and Kidman were champions for about 2 hours. Not even 2 hours. They were champions for about 20 minutes.
That's right.
But by the way, this discussion of Elix Skipper as Skip Over, more entertaining than Mad Mikey versus Laz. All right. I hope Terry
And
Taylor
spoiler
got paid.
alert, this is not the last we'll see of Laz.
Spoiler alert, Terry Taylor's on this match like 25 times, or on the show like 25 times. Terry Taylor's with Dusty Rhodes first. Funnily enough, Terry Taylor had so much heat with Dusty Rhodes as Booker in Jim Crockett Promotions in 85, 86 that it bled over into the UWF purchase when Terry Taylor ended up coming back. And then that bled over to when they were both in the WWF at the same time. Hopefully they've since made up. Dusty said there's no tradition like War Games on pay-per-view. All right. So then we get the start of the Super X Cup, and our first match, Juventud Guerrera versus Nassau. Now, as I noted, the first round matches were taped on August 20th, before that night's TNA pay-per-view, and the rest of the show, including Mad Mikey versus Laz, was taped on the 27th. Now, Juvi's first big move was a springboard crossbody to the floor, and he kicked his legs while doing it to actually make it look like more was happening than it really was. Tenay noted that Nassau recently lost a hair versus hair match in Mexico. And Cyndi, did you look up to see what that hair versus hair match was?
Nope.
He and Masada lost a tag team match to Negro Casas and El Satanico in a double hair versus double hair match. Juvi broke out the People's Elbow, which was largely ignored by the announcers, and then picked up the win with a Juvi driver and a 450 splash. This was a very good way to start the tournament, but as we will note, all of the first round matches are horribly rushed. This, I think, was the longest first round match, and even that wasn't very long. It was like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I still gave it a 6.0 out of 10.
That's exactly what I gave it, 6 out of 10.
Terry Taylor was now with Jim Mitchell. Mitchell said, "Enough will never be enough. He will teach Raven about real pain and real loss. And when you're self-centered and vain like Raven, the only thing you can lose is your identity." And he vowed that Shane Douglas will scalp Raven, which was an interesting choice of words. Up walked main event Glenn Gilberti, who reminded Mitchell that Douglas is on a team tonight, so they better get on the same page. Thoughts on this one?
I really love Father James Mitchell as a promo.
Indeed. He is a tremendous, tremendous promo.
It's a shame that he's stuck in the NWA.
Stuck is probably a strong word. They're more than likely sending him a paycheck that more than likely clears. So, hey, good for him. At this point, he may be the biggest star in the NWA.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah. So up next, we had our next first round match, Teddy Hart versus Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm of the illustrious Storm wrestling family, which has Lance, James, Tony, and many, many others. While Teddy is related to Bruce and Keith and, the Harts. And There's a reason I mentioned he's related to Bruce and not Brett and Owen, because even though they are related, there's a reason that Teddy Hart never amounts to much despite being supremely talented. And that's because he has, in addition to a supreme amount of talent, a supreme amount of ego and enough issues that could fill a newsstand.
Like,
So
he was a massive, massive prick everywhere he went.
Now, I did not notice this, which, for all the complaints we have about TNA production crew, the TNA production, they managed apparently to edit out an entire minute of this match. I don't know why they edited out an entire minute of this match. I do not know where they edited out an entire minute of this match, but apparently they edited out a minute of this match. And ultimately, between the Mad Mikey Laz match and the fact that the show only goes an hour and 50 minutes versus the hour and 55 it usually goes, I don't know why they edited it out. But they edited out a minute. And maybe there were a bunch of botches during that minute, so it might have been a good thing. But Storm broke out a double springboard cannonball dive to the outside. West called Johnny Storm cat-like, which I imagine had nothing to do with Teddy Hart's cat obsession, but it was still pretty funny. Storm dove back into the ring and got caught with an RKO out of somewhere. Teddy used a beautiful top rope acai moonsault to the floor. He did a top rope DDT, which, speaking of TNA wrestlers, WCW wrestlers, that move used to be done by the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea, and it was like the clunkiest, worst-looking DDT you've ever seen in your life. Well, Teddy Hart is much better than the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea. Let's just say that. And then Teddy won with a shooting star press that he called the Hart Attack, which was not a spinebuster combo with a running clothesline. I wrote this was a sprint, and a pretty good sprint at that. I gave it a 5.0 out of 10.
I had it here, another 4 or 5 minute match, didn't waste any time. Not as good as the last match, as Johnny Storm was essentially enhancement talent. 5 out of 10. So we're on the right track with this. This is scary.
I don't know. I thought it was scary last week, and you kept giving low scores. Now Terry Taylor is backstage with Sonny Siaki and Trinity, who are randomly here. And Siaki was in the heel locker room telling Simon and Swinger that he was in charge, and they ignored him. Shane Douglas came in and yelled about how dangerous this match is, and how Douglas said Eric Watts wants all of them hurt, bloodied, and broken, and he has no desire to be that. And this is where I was like, is Siaki in the match? And we'll get to this later. I could not remember the fifth heel on that team. I just knew it was not Sonny Siaki. I remembered Shane Douglas, Simon and Swinger, and
AJ.
Yeah, AJ. And that's the 4 people I remembered in the match. By the way, I like that you knew who I was forgetting, even though I didn't tell you this. But yeah, I remembered AJ, Shane Douglas, Simon and Swinger, and could not remember until the opening segment of the main event who the fifth heel was. I just knew that it was probably not Sonny Siaki.
It makes sense, because he was feuding with D'Lo.
Well, we then get Chris Sabin versus Jerry Lynn in a first-round Super X Cup match. And again, this match was taped on August 20th, and as I predicted last week, when Jerry Lynn wrestled Michael Shane on the pay-per-view, while neither Sabin nor Kazarian were on last week's show, that probably spoiled the next 2 matches in this tournament. And especially since I told you who won the tournament last week, that really spoiled who at least won this match. This was your usual great Jerry Lynn match with the gas pedal pressed. Lynn hit a TKO, but Sabin got his toe on the ropes to break it up. Literally, the ropes were just far enough away that the only part of his body he could touch the ropes with was his toe. Lynn, for some reason, went after the referee, which caused Don Callis to come out and threaten to fire Lynn, and so Sabin kicked Lynn in the ass and scored the win. I believe we're supposed to believe he kicked him in the groin, but he did not kick him in the groin. He kicked him in the ass. maybe this is the show when Chris Sabin did not finally realize how tall he was and was not. Another good match. I gave it a 5.0 out of 10.
I thought this was the worst match of the tournament. Because if there's one storyline that I don't like right now, it is this Jerry Lynn Don Callis feud. It is an absolute bucket of nonsense.
An absolute bucket of nonsense, you say?
Yeah. This could have been something. Could have been that 5 out of 10. Yep. But you have the Don Callis thing, and it just is a 2.5 out of 10 for me.
Mm-hmm. This match says nothing but nice things about you, and you're saying mean things about it.
This match did nothing for me.
Terry Taylor, who has amazing cardio since he's run around the building 4 times in about 20 minutes. Because, these matches are going so quick. We're only 20 minutes into the show right now, and we've already had 4 matches. So keep that in mind. Terry Taylor is now with Raven in the red light room. Taylor congratulated Raven on having a very good match last week, and Raven said his dream has been postponed, but before he can win the world title, he will need to eliminate Shane Douglas, Jim Mitchell, and the New Church. He told Punk and Julio to go take care of the New Church and said he was not going to lose his hair. And we will see as the show goes on whether Punk and Julio manage to successfully fend off Sin and Slash. All right. Time for our final first round Super X Cup match. Frankie Kazarian versus X Division champion Michael Shane. Now, it's important to note this match was taped like maybe 20 minutes before the Ultimate X match. Maybe 30 minutes, because they had a segment that started the show. So maybe 30 minutes before the Ultimate X match, we had Frankie Kazarian versus Michael Shane in the match where Michael Shane bled a gusher, if you remember right.
Yep.
And so, shockingly, this was the slowest match of the opening round. And I say shockingly because, you always hear, when wrestlers don't have a lot of time, they go, especially young wrestlers, they go way too fast. Well, every other match in the first round of this tournament had at least one person who'd been wrestling for quite a while. And this match, with the lowest combined experience of any match on this first round, was the slowest and worked, I guess, the least to get their shit in, for lack of a better word. So Kazarian reversed the powerbomb attempt into a Hurricanrana for the win. The crowd didn't know that Michael Shane was champion when this match was taped, but the announcers certainly did, and they really missed an opportunity to play up that Kazarian has now pinned the champion. I said that this match was equal to, most of what we've seen so far, 5.0 out of 10.
Exactly what I gave it, 5 out of 10.
This is where I wrote, I hope Terry Taylor is getting paid per appearance on this show, as he is now with AJ Styles and Vince Russo. And AJ says this is bullshit, and he smells a rat. Personally, I think it's because Terry Taylor's been running around all over the damn arena, and there may have been a rat in Raven's lair at some point. AJ says he should not be in the match. Russo said AJ's been defending the title every week, so now we're putting the champion in the cage with 9 guys. And then Russo said that nothing will happen to AJ or the belt. All right. So at this point, we're 30 minutes into the show. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest disappointment we've ever seen in our fucking lives. Because I was so fucking psyched for the Super X Cup show. Because I'm like, okay, because I know the final is great. But I'm like, man, they got some talent there on the undercard. And so, man, this is going to be some good shit. But we haven't really been getting some good shit yet because every match has been 2 minutes. Then the semifinals happened. Juventud Guerrera versus Teddy Hart in a semifinal Super X Cup match. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, uh, you know, the first round matches were taped last week. The semifinals and finals were taped this week. And the semifinals specifically were taped before the show, and the finals were taped after last week's show. So in real life, there was a 2-hour break, despite what I'll complain about here in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
However, I did make sure to note that the crowd did not stay in their seats. They all moved all over the place and changed clothes. Not only did they change clothes, Teddy Hart changed clothes too, which is funny because, on the show, it's been about 10 minutes since his last match, and he managed to run backstage and change from short pants to long tights.
He probably ripped his short pants.
Now, the code of honor was adhered to at the start of this match, as they did shake hands. This, in my opinion, is the ultimate what could have been match with two guys with world-class athletic ability, world-class wrestling talent, who honestly could have had Hall of Fame careers, but they each let their egos and in certain cases their personal issues ruin those careers. Like Hoovy, 1998 Hoovy was a can't miss star. By 2000, blah. Teddy Hart had so much promise that WWE signed him even after all the bullshit that he does throughout his career. They signed him in 2006, figuring, okay, he may be a dick on the indies, but he'll have the discipline of being in the WWE system and he'll smarten up. He got fired in 2 months. Teddy Hart can never stop being Teddy Hart, is what we're saying here.
And did they rehire him 3 years after that and paired him up with David Hart Smith, Bulldog's kid, and
that was
Maddie
2006,
and
that was that 2006-2007 period.
Really?
When he got signed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So Teddy did a Hurricane Rana off the apron and then a moonsault off the guardrail to the floor. He went for the Acai moonsault we saw earlier, but Hoovy yanked his foot and caused him to face plant on the mat and the floor. Teddy used a spiral tap and then finally hit his Acai moonsault, but came up selling his knee. Back in the ring, Hoovy hit an Alabama slam and a basement dropkick for another near fall. Teddy used a tornado DDT and a shooting star press, but again came up holding his knee. And despite having all these knee injuries that led to him not being able to make covers, he kipped up for the finish, where he joined Hoovy on the middle rope, and Hoovy gave him a Hoovy driver off the middle rope for the pin. A fantastic match. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It was a really great match. It's just that I kind of wanted a little bit more, and we will get a little bit more later on. That's all.
Then we get the unbelievable return of the interrogator segment. And in theory, they were interviewing Red Shirt Security, Ryan Wilson, and Kevin Northcutt, except Ryan Wilson didn't say anything until the very end where they ended the interview. But Kevin put himself over. They run down the black shirts, and they talk about how great the heels are, how bad the baby faces are. Kevin Northcutt picks Bob Sapp over Mike Tyson, which was a rumored match that was going to be booked in Japan at the time, which, spoiler alert, never happens. And then Wilson said at the very end that that's the last word to end the segment. As with pretty much every interrogator segment we've ever had, this was pretty pointless.
Pretty pointless. However, I really didn't know that Kevin Northcutt trained Bob Sapp at the power plant. So if I remember correctly from, I think it was WCW Deep Cuts, that they were planning on having Bob Sapp in late 2000.
Oh yeah, there was a promo on Thunder with this random woman who was never seen before or again interviewing Bob Sapp on Thunder in like November of 2000.
And then like I'm trying to remember what it was like K1 or Pride that threw Bob Sapp tons of money to fight.
Exactly. Japan had money. Um, I had to laugh when you mentioned the WCW Deep Cuts YouTube page because, or not the YouTube page, but the Twitter page because I kind of got them in trouble once.
How'd you do that?
Um, so they had an account before this one, and I don't know. I was in a pissy mood one day, and the WWE, not the WWE, but the WCW Deep Cuts Twitter page was selling WCW content where you could pay the guy who ran it X number of dollars, and he would like give you files of WCW content that A, you could just torrent on XWT, which was funny enough to begin with, but B, he's out there openly trying to sell WWE owned footage. Like, like he's the owner of it. Like the way he was saying it, like he was definitely implying that he owned this footage and that it was his to sell. And I was in a really shitty mood one day and I fired off a letter to WWE Legal. And I'm like, hey, look at this guy. And his Twitter page went down really soon after that. And he eventually brought it back up, and I forget what he said, but all I could think was like you were not telling the truth. Your page got taken down because you got a legal letter from Jerry McDivitt, um, and you had to bring it back up. And however he does it now, it's like he basically does what everyone else does, which is has a Twitch stream where he takes donations and all that shit. Because like you can't say that you own footage that WWE owns and try to sell it on your page.
The funny thing is about that is some of the stuff that he does show. Like I've been to his Twitch streams. He does off the grid, which is not WCW stuff. It's like independent stuff that's out there. Like what has he done? He did the Vegas Promotional Warrior. Like the NWF.
NWC.
Yeah, NWC. He also does a lot of Memphis stuff. He also did like some very forgotten promotions, which I enjoy. And you can tell he puts a lot of work into his videos and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk about the older WCW stuff, like 90 to like anything that isn't Saturday night from 94 onward. Like some of that stuff doesn't exist anymore.
I don't want to be that person, but you could torrent literally. I think the only year WCW Saturday Night that I cannot find is 1999.
Oh, I have
Everything
that.
else, everything else can be found on XWT or XWT Classics.
It's XWD Classics. What I would love to see though is the few weeks that it was WCW Saturday morning when it was a recap show.
The world does not need to see WCW Saturday morning. Um, I mean, hey, I'm with you. It's like, I'm a completist. I want everything. Um, but like, yeah, it's funny because you can find like, Live Wire and all that shit. So it's not like, oh, well, they just don't do that kind of thing. It's like, no, they do. They do. But by the way, while searching on YouTube for WCW Saturday Morning, from the WWE YouTube page, full length match, WCW Saturday Night, Goldust versus Triple H. And I mention this because It is not Goldust versus Triple H. It is Dustin Rhodes versus Jean-Paul Levesque, which, by the way, was Triple H doing a really, really, really bad French accent.
Okay, what is
It,
worse? Jean-Paul Levesque with that really bad French accent, or the previous gimmick that he had with the company, Terra Rising?
See, I don't think he was actually in WCW as Terra Rising. Everyone keeps saying that, but like I'm pretty certain that Terra Rising was just quote unquote his indie name and gimmick, and he showed up in WCW as Jean-Paul Levesque.
Oh, there's a match with Road Dogg or Brian Armstrong where he's terrorizing on Worldwide.
Him and Regal were supposed to get the tag team titles, but he quit to go to WWE, and that's how Bobby Eaton became Earl Robert Eaton, and somehow didn't get the tag titles that Regal were supposed to get to begin with.
They did. They got them.
Regal and Eaton were never WCW tag team champions. They were in a three-way feud with the Nasty Boys and Harlem Heat, and was bouncing between the Nasty Boys and Harlem Heat.
We're looking this up right now because I could have swore they won it in like '95.
Nope. Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater were champions. The American Males were the champions. And Harlem Heat and the Nasty Boys were champions. But the Blue Bloods did not get the straps.
And the American Males did.
American Males. American Males. Ultimately, the American Males got them because it was like the second or third Nitro, and they wanted a title change. And the champions were Harlem Heat, who were heels. So you had to have a babyface win it. And I don't know why they chose the American Males instead of the Nasty Boys. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because American Males lost them back. Maybe that's why, because they'd already done the Nasty Boys win the belts and then immediately lose them back thing. But American Males won them and then lost them, like, I don't know, 2 weeks later, maybe a little bit longer, because they lost them back on WCW Saturday Night and never got mentioned on Nitro ever again. But it did continue. Bagwell, like I don't know about this guy's ego. Like maybe he needed to have a bigger ego than he did, because Bagwell, he was like a 4-time tag team champion, but every time the gimmick was every time he won it, A, it was with a new partner, and B, they'd immediately lose it back. Like him and Patriot were champions, him and Scorpio were champions, him and Riggs were champions, and they all immediately lost the belts back. He never really had a run as champion. Him and Shane Douglas were champions, and then either he or Shane got suspended. I think it was he. And so they lost the belts to Chronic. Anyway, we're ranting and raving as if this was a crappy show with crappy matches. But Chris Sabin versus Frankie Kazarian in the other semifinal Super X Cup match. Now, I know that Teddy Hart changed his gear between the first and second round and he lost. Frankie Kazarian changed his gear between the first and second round. So not a great idea here by these people who keep changing their gear. So they were working so fast at the start of this match that they were fucking shit up. And thankfully they realized that, because they slowed the hell down, and the match got a lot better because of it. Sabin dumped Kazarian out of the ring and then went for a dive, but in a weird spot, Kazarian jumped up on the apron and pulled down the top rope, which led to Sabin being caught up on the ropes, which makes no sense because Sabin was going for an over-the-top rope dive. So wouldn't Kazarian pulling down the top rope meant that Sabin would have flown out of the ring and crashing on the floor? Oh well. Anyway, they must have been jealous of how smoothly Teddy Hart did the diving DDT, because Kazarian did one just as smooth, but he did his by diving over the top rope and giving Sabin the DDT on the apron. Kazarian blocked a future shock and hit the Wave of the Future for a near fall. Sabin used a muscle buster that Tenay called Back to the Future, but Kazarian kicked out of that. Kazarian broke out the flux capacitor, but both men were hurt, so Kaz couldn't attempt to cover, and Sabin rolled through a victory roll and got the pin. And actually, if anything was when Kazarian went for the victory roll, I'm like, oh, they're doing the Bret Owen finish. Sabin's going to sit through. And, well, not so much. They went one extra step. But Chris Sabin wins. Not as good as the last match, but easily the second best match of the tournament so far. 7.5 out of 10.
And not only enough, this is where we get back on track because that's exactly what I gave it, 7.5. I thought this was a really darn good match. They took full advantage.
Go ahead.
They took full advantage of the 8 minutes. You know, it had a hot beginning, slowed it down, and a hot finish. It's what you want.
It was a tremendous match, and this show's picking up, ladies and gentlemen. The show is picking up. So Terry Taylor was now with America's Most Wanted. Storm said revenge is spelled AMW. So James Storm would not have won the Letterkenny spelling bee. Harris said tonight the titles are put aside and they are honored to be on the same side as Raven, D'Lo Brown, and Jeff Jarrett. I don't know if honored would have been the word I would have used there, but oh well. Randomly, for no discernible reason, Kid Cash and Abyss showed up, and Kid Cash apologized to Terry Taylor for the disrespect from last week. Cash put down AMW and then slapped Terry Taylor, who had to be held back by Abyss and the Red Shirts, who just happened to be there.
That's what I was thinking. Why were they there? Abyss was there. He held off Terry Taylor last week.
I guess he kind of had them there because you wanted them there because, well, you have 3 baby faces and like 2 of them are AMW and they kind of look like pussies by being held back by one guy, even if the one guy is Abyss. So you wanted to have 2 other big guys, but it made no sense that the Red Shirts just happened to be there, you know, for this promo. All right. So then we go straight to the finals of the tournament. Chris Sabin versus Juventud Guerrera in the finals of the Super X Cup. Now, like I said, I know the semifinals were taped before the show last week, and the finals were taped after the show last week. However, in the sense of the show, in the flow of the show, Chris Sabin had an 8 or 10 minute match, got a 90-second reprieve, and had to walk right back out for his next match. Like, we talked about how meaningless that Mad Mikey Laz match was. If you're going to make that match happen, this is where you put that match. Because it gives you a breather, and it gives you the excuse to say, okay, we're giving Chris Sabin a little bit of a breather before his next match, so we're going to have Mad Mikey versus Laz now. However, they can't do nothing right, I guess. Now, it is funny, though, because Chris Sabin had an 8 to 10 minute match, walked to the back. We had an AMW promo, and Chris Sabin walked right back out, and he was not sweating. He was not glistening. He was not showing any ill effects of just being in an 8 to 10 minute match. Which, man, Chris Sabin, you know, when you're 22, 23 years old, you know, the cardio that young man must have had at the time. So there are not enough superlatives for me to describe this match. This is a fantastic match with one teensy tiny little spot that caused me to not give it a perfect score. So the match started with the mirror spots where both go for a drop down. And then when that didn't work, they both tried for a drop kick and just ended up kicking each other's feet. The first big move was a Hoovy slingshot dive out of the ring, back in the ring. Okay, I like this, and I'm sad that Tenay didn't pick up on it, and I'm sad that I don't think I've ever seen this ever again. Juventud Guerrera put on an abdominal stretch, and we've all seen the abdominal stretch before, but this was done differently because he went and hammerlocked the other arm of Sabin. I'm like, man, that was a really cool little spot there. And I'm sad that, like, Tenay didn't see it. because I guarantee he would have said something. And B, I don't think I've ever seen that move ever again. I'm still sad to this day that Mike Rotundo never taught his kids the abdominal stretch and grabbing the ropes. That was the only reason Mike Rotundo existed in pro wrestling after a while, was so he could do the abdominal stretch and grab the ropes. But Juvi did an electric chair drop and pushed back with his legs for a cover, which made Sabin really need to use even more power just to kick out. And they did the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko series of near falls, and it ended with both just collapsing on the mat. Now at Forbidden Door last week and a half ago, I think was it MJF and the Hangman that they basically did. They tried to do the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko series of near falls, and it was more contrived than the spot is supposed to be anyway. Because basically they were in one ball and just kept rolling back and forth, which was not the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko near falls. It's just rolling back and forth. But anywho, Juvi and Chris Sabin did the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko series of near falls. We had reversals of reversals of reversals that culminated in a bulldog by Guerrera. Then in the one spot of the match I was not a fan of, Juvi gave Sabin a tiger driver and did not protect him on the way down. He let Sabin go, and in this move, you're falling headfirst towards the mat. And Juvi just let him go, and I don't know how Sabin did not get hurt. I don't know how Sabin did not fuck up his neck. But Sabin basically landed on top of his head on that move right there. A superplex led to both putting their arms on each other for a near fall. We got a Juvi driver and a 450 splash, but Sabin got his entire foot on the ropes this time and not just his toe. And finally, Sabin won the match and the tournament with a future shock. A fantastic final. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
I was torn. Like I was torn between the 9 that I did give it and the 10 that I would have given it if not for that Tiger Driver spot that you just talked about.
See,
so I gave it the 9.
I thought you meant when you were torn, you were Natalie and Bruglia. I'm sorry,
I wish I were that pretty.
She's a very pretty young lady. So you gave the match a 9?
Yeah, I gave it a 9. I'm pretty sure this match is on TNA's YouTube page, so go check it out.
Oh, I'm sure it is. If it's not, TNA is dumb. Like really, really dumb. Now, during the match, they do say that TNA officials are working on making this an annual event. And unfortunately, for some reason, it is not an annual event. And as of today, 22 years later, they've only had 3 other Super X Cup tournaments. Cyndi, can you tell me who won the other 3 Super X Cup tournaments?
Okay, now this is the singles tournaments, not the...
No, not the World X Cup or the International X Cup. This is just the Super X Cup single 8-man tournament. They've done 3 others over the next 20 years.
Shocker.
Nope.
I thought, because he was involved with a lot of the tournaments, I thought Shocker would have won one.
Nope, he won a random gauntlet match that, honestly, they may claim it to be a Super X Cup, but it's not. And I don't care if people fight me on that one. That it was not a Super X Cup. Actually, I don't even know if he won that match that I'm thinking of. It's at Victory Road 2004. It's a 20-man gauntlet match. Anyway.
Well, I know Shocker won a World X Cup with Team Mexico.
We'll get to all the World X Cup stuff in a few months, but no on Shocker. Honestly, right. I'd be surprised if you don't get one of the 3.
Okay. I kind of think Christopher Daniels or AJ won one.
Nope. However, the second one is nicknamed the Christopher Daniels Invitational because the winner would get a title shot at Christopher Daniels.
So who was Daniels feuding with? Was it like 2005?
It was 2005.
So it
It
had to be
wasn't
Samoa
somebody Daniels
Joe.
was feuding with. It was Samoa Joe. And Joe won. He beat AJ in the finals, and there was shenanigans, which is why we got the Unbreakable three-way.
Which is, I think, to this day, the only Dave Meltzer 5-star match that it got.
Nope. Will Ospreay and Mike Bailey got like 5.5.
Well, this is before Meltzer gave 6-star matches and 7-star matches.
Well, yes,
So
before
we call it
before
the pre OO era.
right. So you got one of them, Samoa Joe. Now the next two, they don't have another Super X Cup for more than for a dozen years actually.
So we're talking
So
2017
ish. The next one's in the 2017 era.
Oh God. Trevor
And I'll
Lee?
say this. Nope. It's somebody who I am 99% sure is on NXT right now. And if he's not on NXT, he was on NXT fairly recently. And this is somebody actually, and when I say that, somebody who works for WWE, not somebody who works in TNA and was going back and forth.
They couldn't have given it to Abyss.
They did not put the Super X Cup on Abyss.
Thank God. Because that would be a TNA move.
Well, they put the X Division title on Abyss and then booked him in a Ultimate X match against Brian Kendrick, I think it was.
And Kendrick won.
Yes, because Abyss went to chokeslam him and lifted him up so high that Kendrick just grabbed the belt.
Didn't use the ladder, so it counts.
By the way, Desmond Xavier won the third.
Oh, Wesley.
Yes. And do you want to guess who the fourth person who won? Who is still to this day the most recent Super X Cup winner? He is a member of the AEW roster. Which, I mean, if you take a look at the TNA roster in 2019 and 2020, you're basically looking at the AEW roster there. But this was 2021.
2021.
Yes.
Ooh.
And this person is currently in AEW.
Ricochet?
Nope. He was never in TNA. I have a feeling you're probably not going to guess this. Because AEW has like 250 people on contract, but would it make it any easier if I told you he's the most recent AEW signee?
Speedball Mike Bailey.
Nope.
Who is
Ace Austin.
Oh.
Yeah. So from here, they plugged the return of Rowdy Roddy Piper. I don't think they said it, but he's going to be on the September 17th show. And then Tenay and West promoted the 1 cent pay-per-view next Wednesday, which has, we'll just say it right now because like we're not going to be here next week to talk about it. It was an interesting idea because they were like, okay, we're going to try to get a whole bunch of people who've never seen the show by offering them this pay-per-view for 1 cent. And we're going to put on like all of our best matches. They have the cage match with AMW and Triple X. They got Jarrett Raven. They got the Sting match. And they got a few other matches in there. Basically, if you were going to make a 2-hour best of tape of TNA, this is what you'd want on that tape. The problem is, as I mentioned last week and I mentioned before, when you're putting together a best of TNA show, and especially Vince Russo booking TNA show, every fucking match has tons of interference, especially that Jarrett Raven match. Because if you're not a regular TNA viewer and you're just seeing, here's a random match with 13 people interfering, that's overkill. Especially when every other match that they're going to show also has a bunch of interference in it.
They said they aired the Ultimate X match too.
Well, I guess that didn't have any interference in it, but still. And also part of the issue, and I still remember this because when I used to buy, before the Observer merged with Figure 4, they would sell the old issues of the Observer. You could write to Grant Swarich, I think was the guy's name. And one of the issues I got was in a couple weeks. And they talk about the 1 cent pay-per-view, and apparently not every cable company got the notice that it's only to charge 1 cent, and quite a few of them still charge $10.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So yeah. So then we get our main event. And again, as I mentioned, could not remember who that fifth guy on the heel team was. So it's Raven, Jeff Jarrett, D'Lo Brown, and America's Most Wanted versus AJ Styles, Shane Douglas, Simon Diamond, Johnny Swinger, and as I wrote, N question mark, with Vince Russo in Wednesday Bloody Wednesday, with Eric Watts as referee and Dusty Rhodes as the keeper of the key, as they mentioned last week. Now, as we mentioned, it's War Games with weapons, and at first they announced that everyone enters in 90-second intervals. However, once the match starts, Tenay says that the first two guys will go 3 minutes before a new person enters. Now, Watts comes out as the referee and sends away all of the ringside people except Tenay, West, and the camera people. And he replaces them with 3 live crew. And so BG James becomes the announcer, Conan becomes the timekeeper, and I didn't actually see him take anybody's stuff, but apparently Ron Killings was in charge of taking everybody's gear to the back. Which
I don't think anybody came out with gear anyways. Or
well, Jarrett did, but he never took off his damn shirt. Jarrett had the tank top he always wore at this point, and he never took it off. So Ron Killings did not have the chance to take gear to the back. So we don't know if he could have replaced Athena. By the way, remember when Athena and Jerry Lynn were randomly talking to each other like 2 weeks ago? Nothing ever came of that.
I think it was just friends. Just friend stuff and stuff like that.
I wrote here, I seriously could not remember who the fifth heel was, just that it was not Sonny Siaki, since they said as much earlier. And I literally remembered who it was when he came to the ring, Christopher Daniels. And I guess Dusty wasn't really the keeper of the key. He was more the manager of the babyface side because he comes to doing with Jeff Jarrett. And I'm like, wow, that's a biased thing for the keeper of the key to be doing. Daniels attacked Jarrett on the floor to start the match because, yes, despite this being a cage match, it's a Jeff Jarrett match, and thus it must start with them fighting on the floor and through the crowd. Eventually, they got in the ring, and the match officially began. I understand they wanted an excuse to get the weapons in the cage, but hanging them on the cage made for a hard-to-watch television experience. We were joined on commentary by Don Callis, MBA, who says that he approves of a cage match because it leads to drawing more money, but does not approve of Eric Watts being on a power trip. The first period ends with Jarrett walloping Daniels with a kendo stick, and that brings in AJ Styles. And I wrote, you do not expect Jarrett to sell for a 2-on-1 disadvantage, do you? Even though one of them is the world champion. And Jarrett basically kicks their ass for most of the next 90 seconds. And the heels take over just as towards the end of the period. Chris Harris came in next, unknowingly previewing a great tag team feud in a few years. Russo runs in and out of the announce desk and says that Don Callis should have been the referee instead. AJ and Daniels kind of put Jarrett through a table as Simon Diamond entered. I say kind of because it was closer to Jarrett, the back of Jarrett's head, and all of Daniels' body went through the table instead. D'Lo was in next. BG was doing a really bad job of announcing because he's not even announcing half the people as they're coming out. Shane Douglas was next. James Storm was next. I didn't note this, but James Storm was in a mood after the title match last week. Apparently he got hurt, and then he was pissed off because there were some people in the crowd being assholes towards him as he was being carried out. And so that was part of the reason why he didn't come out for like the closing segment. But yeah.
It had to be the heel section bastards.
Yeah. Jarrett, El Kabong, Daniels, Johnny Swinger was last in for his team and gave Russo his title belt. Russo, who was already wearing the NWA title, was now a double champion. Who was it I was talking about earlier that I messaged you? Thought who they think they were? Vince Russo? Wasn't it Don Callis? Yeah, Don
Callis.
Don Callis on Forbidden Door was carrying around 2 championship belts. I'm like, who the hell does he think he is? Vince Russo. Raven was the last person in, limping to the ring for some reason. I don't know why Raven was limping to the ring.
Wasn't this match
It was.
taped? He probably suffered an injury in Ring of Honor. He was probably feuding with Punk or something.
No. Oh, you didn't go where I thought you were going. This was taped 20 minutes after the AJ Styles Raven match from last week. Well, longer than 20 minutes, but maybe 35 to 40 minutes after that match. So maybe he was selling from that match for some reason.
Makes sense.
Half-ass selling. So remember a few weeks ago when Michael Shane bled like a stuck pig? Well, no one was bleeding to that degree, but the 10 people in this match were all bleeding, and combined, the 10 of them equaled 1 Michael Shane. And this is where we get an issue here, because it was next to impossible to keep track of what was going on in this match.
Yep.
Because War Games by itself is a difficult thing to keep track of with 2 rings and 10 guys. This is 1 ring, and TNA had like the 18-foot ring that WCW had. 1 ring with 1 cage. Everybody is in the cage, and we have weapons, and we have a 7-foot-tall referee. And it was so bad that at one point Don West was just reading my notes because he said James Storm gave someone an 8-second ride, which tells you all you need to know there. Finally, they did get one thing right on, camera. Jarrett gave AJ a stroke from the top rope. D'Lo gave him a frog splash. Chris Harris gave him a top rope leg drop. And Jarrett pinned AJ to win the match for their team. After the match, this is where we went from good chaos to bad chaos. Because this match, and I'll just say it, this was a lot of good chaos, this match. Everyone involved, from the 10 wrestlers in the match to Watts to even Russo, Callis, and Dusty, it contributed perfectly to a chaotic element that I considered good chaos. The problem is, after the match, we had the bad chaos. Randomly, Legend was now at ringside. Him, Simon, and Swinger were beating up Dusty Rhodes, which got 3 Live Crew involved. Trinity was down there. I don't think they mentioned her, but I saw her. She was there. Kid Cash, or not Kid Cash, but Sonny Saki was probably there, but I didn't note him. The Red Shirts ran down. Glenn Gilberti ran down, and everyone was just fighting with each other. Eventually, Sin and Slash came down, which I guess showed that Punk and Julio didn't do a very good job of keeping the New Church away. And in the ring, everyone else fought on the floor. In the ring was just Douglas, Raven, and the New Church, and the show ended with Douglas cutting some of Raven's hair.
Gotta build up that hair versus hair match that wasn't announced until the one-set pay-per-view.
And the theory, this was, I guess, a fine theory in theory, was that they were expecting a lot of people who never watched the show to be watching the 1-cent pay-per-view for the first time, and they wanted to announce a big match on that show to try to convince them to watch next week. Why they couldn't just announce it here, since they're theoretically going to have new viewers next week, I don't know. That's not important, I guess. But anyway, there was a lot going on this match, like I said, with 10 wrestlers, weapons, and 1 ring. And I'd say, well, they learned their lesson, except most of the eventual Lethal Lockdown matches, they do follow a similar 10-man, 1-ring format. However, they do improve it in one way, because in future Lethal Lockdown matches, they do the thing with the roof where the roof will eventually come down with the weapons on it. So at least, pardon me, it lets the match happen before they do that. And
there's
I
less
gave the
people.
match. Go ahead.
Like some of the Lethal Lockdown matches will have 8 people,
Yeah, but
and
most
then
are
others
10.
would have 10.
And the thing is, at least when they get the 6-sided ring, I don't know the exact dimensions, but it is a bigger ring. There's more space within the 6-sided ring, so it's not quite as bad as this. And I gave the match a 6.5 out of 10. I mostly enjoyed this match, even with, how it ended up being, because I thought everyone did their jobs very well. And as much as I may not like certain people getting involved, I thought Russo being a nut job running in and out of the commentary desk, it added to the fun chaos of the match.
It was fun, cast. That's why I gave it a 6.5 as well. But the ending was, it's just like you can't. Russo can't help himself.
Yep. All right. So that brings us to the end of the show. And oh my God, you thought I was watching an entirely different company and during this when I tell you the scores for this one. So match quality of 5.89. Obviously dragged down by that Mad Mikey Laz match and the rapid fire succession of those first round matches. Honestly, I don't even know how you could have gotten around that. Like, I mean, not having Mad Mikey versus Laz would have been a great way to get around it. But like that match went like 2 fucking minutes. There wasn't like maybe taking out that annoying interrogator segment, maybe cutting some of this fucking Terry Taylor promos. You could have given the earlier matches an extra minute or so. But like, I don't
cut
know.
out the Mad Mikey Laz match. I would replace the interrogator segment with a Christopher Daniels mini sermon.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like even like if you did that, you're just replacing a promo segment with a promo segment. And the point of this is I'm trying to like improve those first round matches. So it's like you can't really improve it by giving them an extra 15 to 20 seconds each. I mean, you can get a little bit, but still.
You're also forgetting the entrances that Laz and Bad Mikey had.
I mean, that brings it to 4 minutes. It's like it's like honestly, get rid of that. Get rid of some of the interviews. Like you could have had like an extra 8 minutes if you would have done that and gave each of the first round matches an extra 2 minutes, and it would have been even better. Otherwise, the first round just seemed completely useless and made you wonder why they didn't just do, 2 rounds, a semifinal and a final. Anyway, overall enjoyment. Despite the bitching I just did for the last 2 minutes, overall enjoyment, 10 out of 10. I would love to nitpick about certain aspects, but this was one damn good show, and it tells you everything you need to know about whether or not TNA could put on a great show. And yeah, Juvi was the MVP. If you were giving an award for an MVP of this tournament, it would have gone to Juventud Guerrera. But you know something? There were a lot of non-Juventud Guerrera people on this show, and this was a damn good show.
Yep.
Future build. Sit down for this one. 10 out of 10. On this show, we built up 2 different contenders to the X Division title. Because Frankie Kazarian beat the champion, and then Chris Sabin won the tournament. Hell, I was left wanting to see more Juventud Guerrera and more Teddy Hart. Then we set up AJ Styles defending the world title against Jeff Jarrett, who pinned him. We showed that Chris Harris was worthy of being in consideration for a title shot. And D'Lo Brown, give him a fair shot. He deserves a world title match too. Plus, even though we now know that we don't get an annual Super X Cup, however, they told us that we would. And thus, after seeing such a high quality show, if you bought the show, you were like, okay, I can't wait till the next Super X Cup because I'm definitely going to buy it. And if you didn't watch the show and you just heard about people talking about it, you're like, holy fuck, I can't believe I missed the Super X Cup. The next time they have a Super X Cup, I'm going to buy that show. That's how good this show was. It made you want to buy another show that never happens. Who would have thought that putting on a high quality show would get people excited to want to watch your show?
What a thunk.
And that gives us an unbelievably high overall rating of an 8.63.
Well done. Well done, TNA. You finally achieved something beyond mediocrity. You achieved actual greatness.
It only took 15 months.
Now let's see how fast they can squander it.
You know, at the end of my books, I tell you like what the best 5 and worst 5 shows were during that period of time. I can't wait until I put together that notes for the TNA shows. Where like number 1 is the Super X Cup at 8.63, and number 2 will be a random show that is like a 4.8.
Oh
it's
no!
Like,
I got the first World X Cup.
Oh, that's still the cup.
That's 2004. Actually,
so, but that's not what happens next. Up next is the International X Cup, because that's when they have like the 8-man. They do an 8-man tag, but it's an 8-man 2-team thing where it's like the US versus Mexico. And then they have like, I think the UK, and I think they have either Canada or Japan. And then they have the World X Cup, which is the 4 teams, which is US, Mexico, I think Canada. Yeah, Canada, because Petey Williams is in it, and Japan.
Yeah, the first one is US versus Mexico.
And it's like, if I recall correctly, they do 4 singles matches, 2 tag matches, and then an 8-man elimination tag match, and it's all points related. And whatever team has the most points wins the International X Cup.
And I consider that show the best break between 2 of the worst TNA shows that you'll see.
Oh, I can't fucking wait. Because I know at some point we get, and this may have been during that period, but at some point we get this Jeff Jarrett on a power trip angle, and he fires like half the people in the company. Like he fires Mike Tenay, I think, and all this other shit, and it leads to the return of Vince fucking Russo.
Are you ready for the okay, so spoiler. End of January, he gets full power because Don Callis beats Eric Watts.
And then I think that's like Don Callis' last show.
No, he's around for a couple more shows and then he's done. Then the Under New Management show, which is one of the worst of TNA. Then the first International X Cup brouhaha, which is USA and Mexico. The show after that is the return of Vince Russo. Oh, by the way, Tenay gets fired after the International X Cup tournament wraps up in a 4-minute segment.
And we say, Vince Russo returns because Hulk Hogan is coming. Not really, but Hulk Hogan is coming. That is literally next month. Like literally, the famous Jeff Jarrett flies himself to Japan and hits Hulk Hogan with a guitar. That is next month. But as for us, we're taking a week off.
Yeah, I got better things to do with my time to watch a 1-cent TNA rerun.
And there's no best damn sports show period for us to watch either.
I still think that was some of the best shows that we've done as a show. Not to watch, those shows were mediocre at best, but to make fun of, those were some of the best shows.
And those shows were definitely the man. My memory of watching TNA when I was younger does not match what it actually was, kind of thing.
Mm-mm.
It was like, oh my God, those were bad shows.
At
Anywho,
least we got some good matches out of it, though. I mean, that Ultimate X match, AJ versus Abyss, and Jarrett versus Hardy wasn't that bad for a steel cage match.
that's going to do it here for this particular program. Like I said, we're off next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks for one of the most infamous moments in TNA history. It's amazing how many of those they have during this era. It is Raven versus Shane Douglas in a hair versus hair match in one of the most graphic moments in TNA history. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's going to do it for this week's show. Anything else you want to say before we go? Any video games you've been playing in the last hour?
Not in the last hour. I was doing this podcast. I was paying full attention to the podcast except for stuff we were looking up.
There you go. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 14 days.
Rudy Charles should still be fired.